LaGrange Road to Briggs. There was a stalled semi. Southbound 53 delays from Rand to Kirchhoff, and northbound it's heavy from 290 to Kirchhoff due to a reported crash. Delays on the northbound Tri-State are Southwest Highway to the Hinsdale Oasis and from the Reagan Tollway to Lawrence. But Adams Tollway it's heavy 31 to Barrington Road. Reagan Tollway delays are Orchard to the Aurora Toll and 59 to Yackley. Kennedy O'Hare to downtown it's 51 minutes. The Ike an hour and 8 minutes, 390. Stevenson 57 minutes, 355 to the drive. The Ryan 33 minutes from 95th. That's traffic. I'm Jim Calamonte on AM 560 The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. In our 1 hour heating and air conditioning weather center, cold day ahead with partial sunshine. We may go over the freezing mark. Its high is 34, but a low of 20 overnight. 27 officially at O'Hare. Next news at 9. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560 The Answer.
This hourly segment is brought to you by Get Down to Business with Shalom Klein, the show for business and jobs powered by Tandem HR. Heard Sunday evenings at 6.
When you've got questions, he always has an answer. It's Sean Hannity this afternoon at 2 on AM 560 The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy at day one of Impeachment Theater.
Yes.
And I'm not saying it was a circus, but there was a drag queen named Pissy there.
Pissy.
No. But enough about Schiff.
Heyo.
Devin Nunes's opening statement, he's the ranking member at House Intelligence Committee, 3 crucial questions that should have been asked and answered before any hearing took place. They weren't. He's just making a rhetorical point. But the questions that we need answers to.
But we should not hold any hearings at all until we get answers to 3 crucial questions the Democrats are determined to avoid asking. First, what is the full extent of the Democrats' prior coordination with the whistleblower? And who else did the whistleblower coordinate this effort with? Second, what is the full extent of Ukraine's election meddling against the Trump campaign? And third, why did Burisma hire Hunter Biden? And what did he do for them? And did his position affect any U.S. government actions under the Obama administration?
Fair questions. One of the questions was put by the Republican inquisitor, Steve Castor, to Ambassador Bill Taylor. And that's how that went, the question about Hunter Biden and Burisma.
Do you know if he possesses any other elements other than the fact that he is the son of, at the time, the sitting vice president?
I do not.
Okay. Ambassador Taylor, do you know whether Hunter Biden offers anything other than the fact that his dad's the former vice president?
I don't.
Or at the time was the vice president?
I have no knowledge of Hunter Biden.
But you would agree he raises questions, right? He was getting paid, I think, $50,000 a month to sit on the board.
Hello,
Well, and others
Ambassador
pressed
Taylor?
him, too, about Hunter Biden.
I raised my concern that Hunter Biden's status as a board member could create the perception of a conflict of interests. Let me be clear, however. I did not witness any effort by any U.S. official to shield Burisma from scrutiny.
That's not others. That's George Kent
I'm
who
saying,
was testifying.
he was answering the question.
He also said, we thought the CEO of Burisma had stolen money. We thought a prosecutor had taken a bribe to shut the case. And so he was asked by Castor, you in favor of that matter being fully investigated and prosecuted? Yeah. So why is Burisma and the Bidens off limits? Should they be? Seems a fair question. In addition to the others that were asked by Nunes, there was an effort to also get Adam Schiff to address Nunes's first question about the whistleblower and coordination with the so-called whistleblower. That exchange between Jim Jordan and Adam Schiff went like this.
Just to ask a clarifying question, do you anticipate when we might vote on the ability to have the whistleblower in front of us, something you, of the 435 members of Congress, you are the only member who knows who that individual is, and your staff is the only staff of any member of Congress who's had a chance to talk with that individual. We would like that opportunity. When might that happen in this proceeding today?
First, as the gentleman knows, That's a false statement. I do not know the identity of the whistleblower, and I'm determined to make sure that identity is protected. But as I said to Mr. Conaway, you will have an opportunity after the witnesses testify to make a motion to subpoena any witness and compel a vote.
You know, I'd like to talk to the whistleblower to see if he agrees with Schiff. I'm putting together timelines and conversations. What about the timeline and conversation with respect to the whistleblower and the reported interaction between the whistleblower and Schiff's staff? Is that a legitimate area of inquiry? It would seem to be.
I'd like to know how those two met.
Is Schiff telling the truth? Are we supposed to take him at his word, but we can't take anybody else at their word? That's essentially what Democrats are saying. In addition to presenting your two, quote-unquote, star witnesses, as Jim Jordan called them, day one of the impeachment hearing, you're making a state-of-mind case against the President of the United States, and your two key witnesses, or two of your key witnesses, have never met or spoken with the President. As I said, this case, if it were in a court of law, would not survive a motion for summary judgment. For more on the media's coverage of this and splaining of it, we're pleased to be joined by Lara Logan, special correspondent for Sinclair News, former CBS News foreign correspondent. Lara, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I'm no longer with Sinclair. I did a 3-month special assignment with them, and I'm working on something else right now.
Okay, sorry.
But I don't blame you for not knowing that, because I tell you why. Because when I joined Sinclair for 3 months, and a press release said it was just 3 months, the media reported it as if, the right wing has their darling, as if I was married to Sinclair for the rest of my life. Which, fine, if I'd done that deal, it would be fine. But it's an example to me of the bias out there in the smear campaign.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, well, thanks for the clarification and the example. Appreciate that. What about questions that are being raised by Republicans that Democrats refuse to indulge? As an investigative journalist, what are the questions that you have after day one of the testimony?
Okay, so as a journalist, right, if I put politics and bias aside and I just look at the facts, you have a situation where we spent more than $30 million of taxpayer money investigating how Russia interfered with the election. You have a situation here where Ukraine has been forced to acknowledge, and in different ways has acknowledged, that they were involved in interference in the same election. And yet we're expected to believe that there is no reason to learn more about that. So if the standard is that foreign powers meddling in your political affairs is unacceptable and needs to be addressed, then as a journalist, I apply that standard to everybody. It doesn't matter to me whether it's Russia or Ukraine. So I have a problem, editorially and professionally with the idea that we have no interest in that. And it's ironic to me that, in fact, it was Politico that was the site that first published these accusations about Ukraine. That was, at a time when we were sort of in outrage and moral outrage, screaming headlines about criticizing the Trump administration for supposedly not being interested in Russia interfering. And yet Politico is one of the sites with moral outrage, screaming headlines from yesterday's hearing about, dramatic bombshell testimony, et cetera, which is really quite extraordinary to me, because how you can say that that somebody being told by a staffer about a conversation where they overheard someone else having a conversation with the president and getting their assessment of it. Somebody's saying, oh, he's more interested in this than he is in that. Well, that's someone's assessment, right? That's not someone hearing the conversation. That's not someone being able to tell you what the president actually said.
Right. It's hearsay
and how that's a bombshell is, that's, as a professional person, I would never have relied on secondhand or third-hand information as bombshell testimony.
Well, and then Bill Taylor's aide, who heard this conversation, he's going to be testifying tomorrow, but it's going to be behind closed door. And I thought the whole thing was to have transparency here so the American people can kind of judge for themselves.
Yeah, that's just been proven to be a joke, right? I mean, there is no real transparency. In my opinion, when I was trying to look at, figure out what was going on here, Amy, it seemed to me that the closed door hearings this is like theater, right? It's like a show because this is about proving to the American people that this process is open. It's already not been open. We all know that. And so what it seems to be about is you have the closed-door hearings so that everybody, the Democrats, can get their story straight, and they can figure out exactly how to write the lines of the script. And then you have the theater performance, which are the public hearings. But it's not actually designed for openness, because there are a couple of crucial journalistic questions here that I don't hear my colleagues asking. First of all, is this person really a whistleblower? We sort of blur the lines between legal whistleblower protections and a whistleblower in terms of the rules of Congress, which we all know changed, but okay, that perhaps they have the legal right to change those rules. So I'm not questioning that. I'm just asking more. I really object to when we as journalists, we pick up a term and we all just use it, right? Everybody in the beginning said Jamal Khashoggi, the Saudi, national who was killed in the Saudi embassy, was a journalist. He didn't turn out to really be a journalist, did he? He turned out to be a talk show host who became a spokesperson for the Saudi royal family until they fell out of power. And then he became an employee of, the Washington Post, who provided analysis and commentary, i.e. an opinion writer, which is not necessarily the same thing. And then it turned out that he may not have even been writing all of his own opinions. They were coming from, people who had connections to those who opposed the new Saudi rulers, right? And so that word journalist gets used very conveniently. And here it's the same thing. Is whistleblower really appropriate? Has this person got the legal protection of a whistleblower? And by the way, using that implies that there's been a crime that's committed. If a crime has been committed, and we keep talking about a trial, we keep talking, about hearsay would be enough to prove a crime in a court of law. I heard one of the Democrats say yesterday during the hearings. But is there a crime here? And if there is a crime, what is the law? What does the law say? Well, and to me, professionally as a journalist, I try to stick very clearly to the facts. In terms of what is it a crime, is it not a crime, and that to me is important.
Well, there's two things. One, that Congressman, as you would expect, is from Illinois, Mike Quigley, and he's redefining hearsay to be synonymous with a circumstantial case, which I think is what he was trying to get at, but he doesn't know the difference. And the whistleblower redefinition, I really like you seizing upon that, because one of the way the media is treating it, the Beltway media, treating this guy who was identified and not refuted by Paul Sperry, realclearinvestigations.com. This is a name that shall not be spoken. They're treating the whistleblower like he's a confidential source, and to report his name would be to give up a source rather than somebody who is effectively now a public figure, and you would think there would be interest in identifying independently confirming, fine, but provide the context, because that's what gives meaning to this story, is context.
Okay, yeah. So as you guys know, right? As a journalist, I can think of nothing more important than the context that is necessary for people to make up their own minds. First of all, we have selective leaks that this person was supposedly a CIA person, right? Operative. That's the assumption. And there's a degree of credibility that comes with that. So you will leak details that add to this person's credibility, but you won't leak any of the information that allows people to make up their own minds. And how do you know that this person was a CIA operative? How do you know they weren't a CIA analyst? And what is the difference between an analyst and an operative? There's a world of difference. You can literally be a kid out of college who's on their first desk job at the CIA. You get put in the NSC while you're waiting for your clearance in order for you to walk through the door at Langley. That doesn't make you a CIA operative of any credibility or standing, right? It doesn't even mean the same thing. We have absolutely no idea if that was the situation this person was in, or if they have a long-standing career and they're worthy and deserving of the credibility that comes with that amount of information being leaked. But the hypocrisy in the standards of journalism is the part that I just really want to reiterate. Putting personal opinions aside, there is nothing more significant than impeachment in terms of the credibility of the president himself. And let's not forget, this is not about the president in one sense. It is about the will of the people who have put him in power. He is an agent of the people, is he not? That is his purpose. He was elected to carry out the will of the people. And so people make this very personal. It's all about Donald Trump, right? It's all about Donald Trump. But it's not just about Donald Trump. It's about something much more significant and much more powerful. And it's up to the people to make sure that their promise, right, the promise that has been carried out from the time that this country has been a democracy, is honored. And so when journalists selectively apply different standards to different things, I expect it from politicians, right? There is going to be spin from politicians, and I think you give them a free pass when you say they don't know the difference. They know the difference.
Yeah.
This is completely and utterly, this is manipulation of the facts for propaganda purposes and for political gain. And it is corrupt. It is inherently corrupt of the media if you allow those politicians to get away with it and you don't do your job. And it is fair to ask, what was the extent of Ukraine's meddling in the election? It is fair to ask, I just want to say one thing as well that's really, to me, most significant. How come you never see the television footage of Joe Biden when he sits at the Council on Foreign Relations and says, I demanded that they fire this prosecutor, and if they didn't do it within 6 hours before I left, there would be no aid. And my God, they did it. Right? How come that video isn't used over and over and over again? And I say that because you constantly read in the print media and online for television media that there's a conspiracy theory and an unfounded allegation that anything related to the Bidens happened. And yet here is the video. And, you get people like Brian Stelter on CNN, who's little more than a political operative for Media Matters for America and one of the great propagandists of this country and of the media at the moment. And you have a guy like this who completely and utterly ignores all kinds of stories, and yet he makes hay over the conservative coverage of these things all the time. The hypocrisy in those standards is you know what? It's a stain on journalism. It's a stain on all of us, especially those of us who are trying to do their very best to do independent journalism and to put their bias and own opinions aside in order to let the process and the value of real journalism, survive, which is what is really a propaganda onslaught.
She is former CBS News foreign correspondent Lara Logan. Lara, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. And we'll talk to you soon. And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Balance of Nature's fruit and veggie capsules contain 100% fine-ripened fruits and vegetables, tested pure with no pesticides, fillers, or additives of any kind, and are the most effective whole food supplements on the market today. Fruits and vegetables are on an average 85% water. Balance of Nature uses original nutritional value. Experience the Balance of Nature difference for yourself. Call or go online now and become a preferred customer, which gives you our best pricing and free shipping. And we will take an additional 35% off of your first order. This will